Welcome everyone to my Mualani guide. Mualani is going to be the first 5-star character from Natlan, and in this video, I will go over her kit and explain what she does, go over her playstyles, artifacts and stats, weapons, team comps, and finally Constellations. Most information about Mualani is already officially out there, but there may be some minor adjustments before she's released. All gameplay of Mualani in this video is all official gameplay. I am in no way affiliated with the Creator Experience server, nor am I using any gameplay from the Creator Experience server. But without further ado, let's go over Mualani's kit. Mualani is a 5-star hydro damage dealer. She scales on HP, has a crit rate ascension bonus, and wields a catalyst. Her normal attacks deal 3 hits of hydro damage and are not very significant to the rest of her kit. Her elemental skill allows her to enter the Night Soul's Blessing and allows her to start surfing, increasing movement speed and resistance to interruption. Once she gains the Night Soul's Blessing, she gains 60 points. Just moving around on her surfboard will consume Night Soul points. Once all the points are depleted, Mualani will exit the Night Soul's Blessing. During the Night Soul's Blessing, Mualani's normal attacks will be converted into Sharky's Bites, dealing Night Soul aligned hydro damage, scaling on max HP. While Mualani is surfing, if she makes contact with an enemy, she will mark them with marked as prey and gain 1 stack of wave momentum. You can gain multiple stacks at once just by running into multiple enemies, or against a single enemy, you can gain additional stacks every 0.7 seconds by running into them repeatedly. Up to 3 stacks of wave momentum can be gained. For every stack of wave momentum, Mualani's Sharky's Bites will deal bonus damage. Once 3 stacks are gained, Mualani's normal attack during the Night Soul's Blessing will be converted to Sharky's Surging Bite, consuming all stacks of wave momentum and dealing much more damage. Additionally, using Mualani's Sharky's Bites or Sharky's Surging Bite against enemies tagged with marked as prey, the mark will be removed, and she will fire shark missiles at up to 5 marked enemies, dealing hydro damage equal to that of Sharky's Bites. Although this gives her some AoE damage, it does come with a caveat. When multiple enemies are hit with the shark missile, the damage dealt will be decreased by up to 28% when 3 enemies are hit. This skill has a cooldown of 6 seconds, and will last until all the 60 Night Soul points are consumed. Damage through Mualani's Sharky's Bites or Sharky's Surging Bite is considered normal attack damage and scales on max HP. As for Mualani's Burst, using her burst will fire off a super shark missile, tracking enemies, and dealing AoE Night Soul aligned hydro damage. This burst has an energy cost of 60 and a cooldown of 15 seconds. Mualani's first passive will increase the duration of her Night Soul's Blessing by granting her more Night Soul points. Whenever Sharky's Surging Bite hits an enemy, a puffer will be generated. Picking up this puffer will restore 20 Night Soul points. Up to 2 puffers can be generated in a single Night Soul's Blessing. Picking up this puffer should not be difficult, as the puffer will be coming to you instead. As for her second passive, when any party member triggers a Night Soul Burst, Mualani will gain 1 stack of Wave Chaser's exploits, lasting for 20 seconds. Up to 3 stacks can be gained. When Mualani uses her burst, she will consume all stacks of Wave Chaser's exploits and increase her burst damage by 15, 30, or 45% of max HP, based on the number of stacks cleared. A Night Soul Burst can be triggered by any party member when they deal elemental damage. A Natlan character must be in your party to allow triggering a Night Soul Burst. There is also a cooldown for this. When there is one character from Natlan in your party, a Night Soul Burst can be triggered once every 18 seconds. The more Natlan party members you have, the lower the cooldown. Getting multiple stacks of this passive might be difficult with the current number of Natlan characters we have, but you should be able to get 1 or 2 stacks of this passive if you burst every other rotation. In place of the usual utility passive a character has, Mualani has 2 more passive abilities related to Natlan exploration, which allow her to enter the Night Soul's Blessing for longer or at certain times. And for a traditional exploration passive, Mualani has the ability to mark the locations of nearby resources unique to Natlan on the mini-map. With all of that out of the way, let's quickly go over Mualani's rotation. You first start with your team rotation, then switch to Mualani, cast her elemental skill, and make contact with the enemy target to reach 3 stacks of wave momentum. After that, use her normal attack to consume all stacks and launch Sharky's Surging Bite to deal as much damage as possible, with her first passive allowing her to restore Night Soul points. You should be able to get 3 of Sharky's Surging Bite attacks without much difficulty. Once the Night Soul's Blessing duration is up, you can then use your Elemental Burst. This is just a simple and easy to pull off rotation for Mualani. There are more possible rotations, which can potentially yield better results. If you are running the Obsidian Codex set, using Mualani's burst at the end of her rotation would allow you to gain the crit rate buff on her burst. And I would also recommend using her burst every other rotation to cut down on energy recharge requirements and possibly get more Wave Chaser's exploit stacks from her second passive to use in her burst. Mualani is a Hydro main DPS, one that is very strong. She deals most of her damage in multiple big hits, separated by a couple of seconds. Being Hydro, she also has the option to be played in vaporize teams. Vaporize is the reaction you get when both Hydro and Pyro react. This is an amplifying reaction that can greatly increase your damage. Amplifying reactions add an extra multiplier to the attack, which can sometimes even double your damage. When a Hydro character triggers Vaporize by applying Hydro onto an enemy affected by Pyro, this multiplier becomes 2. This again greatly amplifies your damage. A lot of Pyro and Hydro characters' highest potential damage comes in Vaporize teams. However, for some characters, these teams may not always be the best option, as they limit team options and might even be tedious to set up sometimes. For Mualani, she deals most of her damage in single big hits and can manage to vaporize every hit. What limits Mualani's Vaporize teams is the Pyro character necessary to apply Pyro. While there are great options for this slot, they all come with some drawbacks. Xiangling can apply a lot of Pyro and deal decent damage, but she will need a huge amount of energy recharge if there isn't a second Pyro character. Dea can apply Pyro from her skill, but she needs to be on Sacrificial Greatsword to reset her elemental skill cooldown, as the cooldown time is a bit too long for most rotations, and the Pyro she applies from her coordinated attack can only trigger once every 2.5 seconds, and can have some problems when dealing with multiple enemies. Currently, for Mualani, there is not a clear best option for her Pyro teammate, although that may be fixed by the Pyro Archon. Aside from Vaporize, Mualani is strong enough that she can also perform fine in Mono Hydro, Electrocharged, or Freeze teams, and you can definitely run those teams if you wish to do so. Hyperbloom may not be the best option, since Mualani does not apply Hydro from off-field, and constantly normal attacking to drive the team is not what she does best. Mualani herself is still pretty strong. Against a single target, she can potentially achieve some of the fastest clear times compared to other Hydro characters, and while she is plenty strong, if you already have other Hydro damage dealers, you don't really have to get her. Compared to another Hydro Catalyst HP scaling character, namely Neuvillette, they both excel at different things while being decent in other situations. Mualani has high potential against a single target, but not as much in AoE situations, although still strong. Neuvillette, on the other hand, is amazing in AoE, but still strong enough against a single target. Overall, she's a very strong unit, and as usual, pull for whoever you like. When it comes to Mualani's talent priority, you would first want to level up her skill, as that is the majority of her damage, then her burst. Normal attacks are not necessary to level. Damage during her Night Soul's Blessing counts as normal attack damage, but scales with her elemental skill. When it comes to Mualani's artifacts, her best in slot will be the upcoming set, Obsidian Codex. This set's 2-piece bonus increases all damage dealt by 15% when the wielding character is in the Night Soul's Blessing. As for the 4-piece effect, after the wielding character consumes 1 Night Soul point, while on field, crit rate will be increased by 40% for 6 seconds. Mualani will start consuming Night Soul points instantly and gain the crit rate buff without many drawbacks. Do keep in mind that with this set you get 40% crit rate, and similar to Blizzard Strayer or Marechaussee Hunter, you don't want to build over 60% crit rate so as not to overcap. This is overall Mualani's best in slot, around 4% better than the next best option. Marechaussee Hunter, in a team with Furina, is a decent option, but has overall weaker stats than Obsidian Codex. Marechaussee Hunter provides 4% less crit rate, and the 15% damage bonus applies to normal and charged attacks. Marechaussee Hunter is still a decent option, and you can definitely use it. Heart of Depth is also usable, but the crit rate provided by the other sets gives more damage. Nymph's Dream increases hydro damage and attack, however, Mualani scales on HP. Other 2-piece options with 2-piece HP, hydro damage, elemental mastery can also work as temporary solutions. Moving on to stats, let's first talk about energy recharge requirements. Mualani's burst deals decent damage, but the majority of her damage comes from her elemental skill. That does not make it bad to use her burst, but it is not necessary to invest more in energy recharge to burst every rotation, while giving fewer stats toward crit rate and damage. With Mualani's 60 energy burst cost, around 120 to 140% energy recharge should be enough to burst every other rotation. Bursting every other rotation could even allow you to possibly get an extra stack in from her second passive, increasing your burst damage. If you are running a second hydro unit or characters that provide more energy, you can go even lower 100 to 120% energy recharge, and I would generally recommend not building for energy recharge. As for main stats, for your sands, you can go for HP. Elemental Mastery is also a viable option if you don't have a lot of Elemental Mastery, under 100, and it can even be a better option in such cases. For your Goblet, hydro damage is usually the best option, but HP and also EM are viable. As for your Circlet, if you're running the Obsidian Codex set and factoring in Mualani's crit rate ascension bonus, you're already at 64% crit rate. A crit rate Circlet can make you easily reach over 100% crit rate if you roll crit rate on your other pieces, and that is why I generally recommend going for crit damage. If you have Mualani's signature weapon or you're getting a lot of crit damage, an HP Circlet can be better, since Mualani scales heavily on HP. If you have over 270% crit damage with a crit damage Circlet, running HP becomes a better option. Elemental Mastery is also viable in this case. As for substats, you will want crit rate and damage, HP, Elemental Mastery, and lastly energy recharge, which is not that important for Mualani. When it comes to Mualani's weapons, she has very decent 4 stars and quite a few other options. As Mualani scales on HP, high base attack and attack stats in general do not matter. Her best in slot will be her signature weapon, Surf's Up. This weapon increases crit damage by 88.2%, and for its effect, it firstly increases HP by 20%, and after using an elemental skill, the wielder gains 4 stacks of Scorching Summer for 14 seconds, each stack increasing normal attack damage by 12%, which is a total of 48% normal attack damage bonus. Each time a normal attack hits within 1.5 seconds, you lose 1 stack, and within the same 1.5 seconds, if Vaporize is triggered, you gain 1 stack back. To put it simply, if you're using this weapon in a Vaporize team, you can maintain a 48% normal attack damage bonus on this weapon. If you're playing other teams, you will lose out on a 12% normal attack damage bonus each time you hit an enemy within 1.5 seconds. This is a strong weapon for Mualani. However, this weapon is not at all necessary, as she does have other great 4-star and even free options. Tome of the Eternal Flow is a decent option for Mualani. This weapon increases crit damage by 88.2% and also increases HP. The charged attack damage bonus is not useful for Mualani since she deals normal attack damage. Overall, a decent option and her second best 5-star. 1,000 Floating Dreams is also close to Tome of Eternal Flow and a decent option if you have it. The two 5-star HP catalyst weapons, Everlasting Moonglow and Jadefall's Splendor, are usable but not really anything amazing. The same also goes for other 5-star crit weapons. Ring of Yaxche is a craftable weapon, which we'll all get for free when Natlan comes out. This weapon increases HP, and after using an elemental skill, for every 1000 of max HP, normal attack damage will be increased by 0.6% for 10 seconds. A maximum of 16% can be gained this way. To reach the maximum effect, you would need 27,000 HP on Mualani, which should be achievable. This is a very decent weapon for Mualani, her best free option, and arguably her best free 4-star. The Widsith is a great option that can potentially have pretty high peaks. This weapon can give you either elemental damage bonus, attack, or elemental mastery, and the cooldown for this effect is 30 seconds, which may leave your second rotation without any buffs. And while this weapon can again be great in some situations, I wouldn't really recommend it over Ring of Yaxche. Sacrificial Jade is Mualani's best Battle Pass option, and potentially her best 4-star. This weapon increases crit rate, and after not being on field for 5 seconds, HP and Elemental Mastery will be increased. These effects will disappear after being on field for 10 seconds, and while this weapon provides a lot of good stats, there is a problem with all crit rate weapons if you're running the Obsidian Codex. Mualani has a crit rate ascension bonus, and Obsidian Codex gives 40% crit rate. With both, you're already starting with 64% crit rate. Sacrificial Jade increases crit rate by 36.8%, which sends you over 100% crit rate. And while this would be fine if your artifacts have 0 crit rate, any further crit rate rolls would be wasted stats, which can affect this weapon's performance. This is not reflected in this ranking, as I can control stat rolls. But if you're using this weapon, keep in mind that you don't want any crit rate on your pieces. The upcoming event weapon, Ashgraven Drinking Horn, is another HP catalyst. This weapon's effect will deal AoE damage equal to 40% of max HP when an opponent is hit once every 15 seconds. The HP stat and little bit of bonus damage make it a decent option, but not the best free 4-star. Depending on refinement, this weapon is around 2 to 3% behind Ring of Yaxche. Overall, Mualani has a lot of decent options, some of which are even obtainable for free. When it comes to teams, especially vaporize teams, Mualani does have some possible variations, such as going for double hydro, burning, and even double geo. But first, let's discuss what will be common in all of these teams: the Pyro unit. For Mualani to trigger vaporize, you will need a source of off-field pyro, and since Mualani won't be constantly applying hydro to trigger vaporize, you don't need the fastest off-field pyro application. Xiangling is the best option when it comes to damage, as she deals a lot of damage herself and provides the fastest pyro application. However, for this to happen, you would need to use her burst. Guoba on his own won't be very consistent for this role. Xiangling, in a team without a second pyro unit, would struggle a lot with energy. Her energy requirements would skyrocket up to 270% to even 300% energy recharge, which might make her difficult to build or use. Running a second pyro unit like Bennett to decrease Xiangling's energy recharge cost is not beneficial to Mualani. Bennett buffs attack and Mualani scales on HP. The Pyro Resonance also buffs attack, which again is not useful for Mualani, so using Bennett with Mualani would be a waste, as you could potentially fit much better teammates for Mualani's own damage. Dea is a decent option for this team, as her skill can apply Pyro through coordinated attacks. She also gives interruption resistance and allows Mualani to tank more damage, enabling you to possibly run without a healer or shielder. Using Sacrificial Greatsword on Dea would also solve problems with her skill cooldown. A possible problem with Dea would be her Pyro application in AoE situations, where she wouldn't be applying Pyro to every opponent. But overall, she is a decent and comfortable option to use. Xinyan and Thoma are also usable options, with both granting a shield. Xinyan applies Pyro through her skill, and she also applies Pyro on your active character, allowing your Anemo unit's skill or burst to easily absorb Pyro. Thoma applies Pyro through his burst, which does introduce some energy issues. His C6 makes him better with Mualani, as it buffs normal attack damage. Alongside Mualani, you can opt to use a second Hydro unit, activating the Hydro Resonance. However, using a second Hydro unit can potentially trigger a vaporize before Mualani attacks, removing the Pyro aura. Even with the downside of possibly stealing a vaporize, running a second Hydro unit is generally fine, and some of Mualani's strongest teams would include a second Hydro unit. Furina's damage buffs are very strong, but you will need a team-wide healer in this team. Running Baizhu in this team would allow you to get extra Burgeons in, and the Burning Aura shouldn't be a problem. This team is potentially one of Mualani's best teams. You could also use Jin or Xianyun in place of Baizhu. Candace buffs normal attack damage, and is a great option to use with Mualani, although keep in mind that her C6 would apply much more Hydro, taking vaporizes away from Mualani. Mona is also a decent damage buffer, however she does suffer with energy. Mona does not generate a lot of energy, and to burst every rotation, she would need upwards of 300% energy recharge. Yelan and Xingqiu don't work well with Mualani, as using them effectively requires an on-field character that consistently performs normal attacks. For your last slot in the team, you could go with a defensive unit like Zhongli, who also reduces enemies' resistance. Kachina using the Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City artifact set is an interesting option, as you can gain up to 40% damage bonus with this set and trigger a Night Soul burst more often with 2 characters from Natlan in your party. Alternatively, you could also use an Anemo unit like Sucrose or Kazuha. Sucrose buffs Elemental Mastery, and at C6, she also increases Elemental Damage bonus, which can potentially make her better than Kazuha for Mualani's damage. However, Kazuha is still a great and comfortable option to use. Another option would be to use both Zhongli and an Anemo unit in the same team. You could also include a Dendro unit in these teams, like Emily, who will trigger burning and deal decent off-field damage. With a Dendro unit already in your team, you could use a second Dendro unit to provide the Dendro Resonance, increasing Elemental Mastery. The burning aura in this team shouldn't interfere with Mualani's vaporizes. You could use a second Dendro unit like Nahida, or a more defensive option like Kirara, Baizhu, or Yao Yao. Alternatively, you could go for a double Geo team with Zhongli and Chiori, or use Kachina with the Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City set and Zhongli with the Archaic Petra set to gain a total of 75% damage bonus. Running a team without a defensive unit is completely fine, but for more comfort, I would generally use a shielder or a healer in place of a flex spot in most teams. If you already have Dea, she can allow you to run without a defensive unit. Aside from vaporize teams, you could also form electrocharge teams with Mualani, a second Hydro unit like Furina, an off-field electro sub-DPS like Fischl, and a healer like Jin, or a freeze team, swapping out the electro character for a cryo one instead. While these teams could still perform well, vaporize teams would still bring out the most potential in Mualani. And lastly, Constellations. Mualani has decent constellations, especially early ones, but she will perform very well at C0, so getting her constellations is not at all necessary. Mualani's C1 will increase her first shark's surging bite damage by 66% of max HP, once every single Night Soul's Blessing. The damage reduction that triggers when multiple enemies are hit by her shark missiles will still apply. Additionally, Night Soul points consumption will decrease by 30% when Mualani is out of combat. This is a decent first constellation, bringing a decent increase to damage. If you're wondering between getting C1 or R1, with R5 Ring of Yaxche as a baseline, getting R1 should be a slightly bigger upgrade. Although, do keep in mind that while the cost of guaranteeing a weapon on the banner is now reduced, the chances of getting the featured 5-star on the character banner is now 55%, and the chance of getting the weapon you want on the weapon banner is still at 37.5%. Getting Mualani's C1 is potentially cheaper than getting her signature weapon. As for Mualani's C2, when she enters the Night Soul's Blessing, Mualani will instantly gain 2 stacks of wave momentum, allowing you to launch a Sharky's Surging Bite faster. Another stack can be gained by collecting a puffer. When 2 puffers are collected in a single Night Soul's Blessing, Mualani will restore 12 points over 2 seconds. This constellation is another decent upgrade to her damage, allowing you to get more of Sharky's Surging Bites in, and also slightly changing your rotation. C3 is an additional 3 levels to your elemental skill, and C5 is 3 levels to the elemental burst. C4 directly adds a 75% damage bonus to Mualani's elemental burst, and it also regenerates 8 energy when a puffer is collected, which totals 16 bonus energy in a Night Soul's Blessing. This is a good constellation as it increases her burst damage. The extra energy it gives can also allow you to burst every rotation. And lastly, her C6 allows the increased damage on the first Sharky's Surging Bite from her C1 to apply to all the Sharky's Surging Bites in a Night Soul's Blessing, not only her first hit. Mualani's C6 is her strongest single constellation. Overall, Mualani does have strong early constellations, and all around pretty decent constellations, but none of them are necessary, as she is already strong enough at C0. And that's all from this guide. Mualani looks to be very strong and is a character I will definitely pull for, as she also has a unique rotation. As usual, thank you for making it to the end, and thank you for watching.